how is your company preparing you and the hotel staff to come back to work, or at least come back in full force? Or what does the company seem to be doing? Your respective companies.
I think that communication piece is just so important. The difficult thing for a lot of companies is the navigation of information, and you've got to be reasonably careful when you are, I guess, looking at a whole bunch of legislation. Let's talk about industrial relations legislation, what impacts our people and how we can work with our people. You know, big international companies need to be very careful about how they give advice on these things. And so I think, there's been quite a bit of hotels at a hotel level having to engage legal support to understand exactly what sort of path they're going down, whether that's, standing down employees, whether that's redundancies, all of that kind of stuff. So, I think that's been quite an interesting thing that's come out of this is, while there's great support from our companies and they can give thoughts and advice, legal interpretations of things become quite sticky as you navigate through these things. I think what our company, and speaking from my perspective, is doing really well is just staying in touch with colleagues, is putting things in place like hiring freezes on any external staff. So we might have had some people that have lost some work in a certain hotel. Well, we will try and find work for those people in other hotels in our city before we might look externally from the company. Counselling services have been made available. Retraining opportunities for teams. This is why I think this is such a magic thing to do. There's lots of people out there who aren't going to work every day at the moment, but continuing to build skills. One of the Laclay door members, a friend of mine, Siddhartha, who's based down in Adelaide, told me today that he hasn't had any work, but he's been working at the bank for a couple of months. He managed to pick up some work, so he's been doing something a little bit different in that space. I think communication from our companies, keeping people in touch with what's happening, and that's a difficult thing to do. Like Simon said before, you might not always have the answers to the questions, but people just want to know. They just want to know, even if you don't have the answer to the question, which is just giving them a bit of an update, letting them know that you're working through something, that this is what the occupancy levels are looking like, this is what we're anticipating, this is when we're hopeful that people can come back into the workforce, because it gives them enough information to plan what they're doing in their life. So the communication piece has been most important, I think. Definitely,
it's huge. And Simon, what would you say to that?
Exactly, and I think there's talking as a concierge and talking from the position of UICH. Roderick and the rest of the executive committee for Laclay Door, our primary concern is getting our guys back to work. Is ensuring their jobs are safe as much as we can. I mean, obviously, there's financial constraints from companies and everything else, but it's our job to do to make sure people are as well informed as possible. So this educational program is all important. We want people to be able to hit the ground running when they get back to their hotels. So they're best informed as they possibly can be. This is why this whole series of education seminars and there is to ensure that we are ahead of the game in hospitality. This is going to be a tough road, but if we start now before we're back in our hotels, we can present something to our teams, to our management, to our hotel companies. We want to look at the granular level, literally, actually detail. We can all talk ephemeral how we're going to look after these people. How do you pass someone a pen? Do you sterilize each pen? How are you going to look at your desk? How are you going to, the smile with masks? We said, are we going to do this? What are these protocols? So we need to look at everything on a granular, step-by-step level. And these new protocols that we're going to put into place, and the new training that we need to do, we need massive amounts of training to when we go back into our hotels, because this is uncompromisable. These are safety things. So, when we talk about putting a piece of luggage onto a luggage rack, is it facing the right way? Is that really going to damage someone's stay? Not really. It's not brilliant service, but it's possible. The things that we're doing now cannot be different from one member of your team to another. It has to be exactly the same. This is how we inspire the confidence to go back to work. And I keep saying that we are the guys who have the most contact with our guests. And we have to lead the way. We are the world's leading organization for hospitality on a one-to-one, country-by-country level. So we have a great duty of care here to ensure our members are best informed and that they're able to put the questions forward to us, that we go out to the members because we have a great pool of knowledge there, and we bring all this pool of knowledge together, we summarize it and we hand it back so you are best prepared to open your hotels. And you can go in and go, this is to your teams and go, this is what we've prepared, this is what we've looked at. And of course it's going to have to be adapted to match the certain protocols of, say, IHG or Marriott or whoever it's going to be, but we have something in place. I think this is the way of safeguarding jobs, looking after our guests, reopening our hotels. And those tiny steps will have a big effect. So first of all, it will have an effect on your teams. Your teams will feel confident to come back to work because they've got to feel confident too. They can't be confident with guests if they're not confident with themselves. Then your hotel will feel confident, and then that will start performing, and your company's going to be happy. And eventually, it'll be your city will be reopening. So we have a duty of care on a granular level, but it has a massive effect, and it will help open hospitality and tourism worldwide.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love that you say that, because that actually brings us to our first poll, so that for all of you that are tuning in, would love to hear, and I'm going to just put this here, do you feel adequately informed by your employer during the coronavirus pandemic? So just take a moment right now. You can still hear us talking, but if you could please put in whether you feel like your employer is adequately informing you. And we love to hear what you guys are saying. And it's interesting, but what both of you are, both Gareth and Simon are saying is that, really is coming down to communication, but it's also not only internally, certainly with employees and making sure that the staff feels good, but then also how we'll be able to communicate everything effectively moving forward into our guests. Okay, so it looks like most people have voted. Are these votes coming in? Okay, I will give a couple more seconds here because it looks like a couple more of you are voting. And as that poll, okay, I will go ahead and close the poll now as it seems to have steadied out here. And perfect, so it seems that 77% of everyone said that they felt that their company was doing the best that they could to adequately inform them. So that is definitely a majority. So that's definitely a good thing. Ooh, there we go. All right. So, all right. Well, I wanted to actually, and that brings us, I think, to our next question. I had that I know a lot of us is that how can the concierge, obviously our role, how can the concierge support the reopening of a hotel? What are specific ways that we as concierge can add value and show relevance? Because we certainly know that that's what we bring to the table, but how can we make sure that there's no question about that, and more than just internally, but also externally as well?
Yeah, I just had some thinking about this, and the thing that keeps popping into my mind immediately is about flexibility. And everybody, not just concierge, has to be so flexible as we reopen hotels and reinvent our industry. To the point where, and it might be different in different parts of the world, there is no one-size-fits-all approach, but we're having to rebuild our structures in our hotels from the bottom up. We have and had structures in our properties that we're used to delivering for 80 or 85% occupancies plus. Well, many of us are forecasting, 30% or below for the foreseeable future. So the flexibility of teams is absolutely critical. I've got my concierge for the hotel here at the moment is working in housekeeping. As a good example, we had to suspend our third-party housekeeping company so that we had some work for our own team members to be doing. So we've been busily going through retraining all of our team members, not just how to clean a room, but how to clean a room in this new environment, which is a specific skill set, to a whole nother level. So to me, that flexibility piece is absolutely critical. I think, and we touched on it earlier, the importance of domestic markets is going to be absolutely critical in the early stages of recovery and what we see in these hotels. So if people aren't outbound travelling like they used to, and are looking more so to coming and spending some time in a hotel more close to where they typically live, how can we, and this is an absolutely critical role for a concierge to play, how can we build out itineraries and support the destinations to make them super attractive for someone to come and visit? They might have had a 3-week trip planned, on the other side of the world. They might change that to do 3 or 4 short trips. So how do we make sure that we're capitalising on that? How we're building length of stay for a domestic trip versus what someone might typically do when they stay away. I think, the last thing before, and I'm sure Simon's got some great ideas in this space, is we had this phrase in ISG a number of years ago in the InterContinental brand, which was to be in the know. And Simon was touching on it before. Understanding what's happening in your destination at a granular level is so important, because people's trust has been lost. People's confidence about travel is lost. People want to be able to go to a place and know with 100% confidence that they're safe. And I spent a couple of hours on our front desk today covering some shifts because we are running pretty low in terms of teams and occupancy. And I think as the general manager of the hotel, being able to check a couple of guests in and take them through in the minutiae of why they were safe at our hotel just resonated with them so much. Talking about what chemicals we use now, that we use hospital-grade disinfectant, that we have upped our public area cleanings to, be 3 or 4 times what they were previously. Every single person that's asked a question about the safety and security and hygiene of your hotel has to be able to answer it as confidently as the general manager or as the concierge can, because as soon as someone picks up a weakness of that, nobody wants to be that first hotel that's on the news, not committing to a promise that they made from a cleanliness perspective. So, I think that flexibility, that understanding of what's happening in your hotel is going to be, super important for everybody, but also for the concierge role, definitely.
And you bring up a great point, and sorry, just chime in quickly. I want to hear what you have to say, certainly, Simon. But us as concierge, we are the quite often the go-to person that the guests are coming to with these questions, and so we are the ones that they're looking to for help and for these answers. So that's why it is so important for the concierge to be informed and to be able to bring that confidence and that knowledge to just instill that in the guests as they come and they start their trip.
Nobody can be a bystander with this stuff, right? Like I think anyone that's a passenger with this information is going to be caught out very quickly. So if you don't know it, and if your leaders haven't given you the information you need to confidently be able to talk to guests about what's happening in your hotel, you need to get out there and go after it and get it, because people will be very unforgiving.
Exactly.
Well, I think it actually goes much further than that, especially for concierge. That we have to look at our normal remits, and so one of the things that we're doing already is I want to know how our car company is, what they're doing as far as COVID-19 and making sure that they're compliant. The restaurants, everywhere else that if we're going to open up our cities, we need to be able to have a file literally of the protocols of every one of our vendors on what they're doing. So we can confidently say, yes, you can go on the London Eye, you can go and visit Madame Tussauds. This is what they're doing. There is always going to be an element of risk, but we have to migrate that risk and to make sure it's not as prevalent as it could be. To make sure they are following strict cleaning procedures and cleanliness procedures for every one of our vendors. And that's a job that, this is something I suggest that people start doing now, that they send those emails out. Think of all the touch points that their guests will have outside of the hotel, and already start getting in contact with those people and saying, right, I want some kind of verification on what you're doing. What is the new normal? What are you doing? What is in place that I can feel confident sending my guests? So this is the first job that I would say to all concierge now, is get out there, start getting in contact with your vendors, getting those emails together, start sending them out, start building this file so you can present this. If guests ask, that you've got this information ready to hand to say, no, I've checked, they're doing this, this, and this. I think that's going to be vitally important. I think this is a new role that we're going to have to do, is to make sure that our guests are safe wherever they go.
Mm-hmm. No, it's a great point, and it really just is that flexibility and within the hotel, and that knowledge within the hotel, but certainly externally. I mean, that's what we are as concierge, the liaison to the city. So we have to have our finger on the pulse of things and know what people, what other companies are doing, and can be able to swiftly direct our guests into the destination, because that's part of the whole experience. So we have a lot of questions that have come in. So I want to make sure that we can, to address a couple of them here. So I've tried to send them to you, Simon. I will quickly. I'll see if this has come through to you. But Simon, Daryl, I don't know if that question, if you can see it, but Daryl from Dubai actually has asked. Do you see the question? His question is, are there any timelines or time frame when the hotels in London are going to be reopening as Dubai is picking up reopening?
Yeah, I can see two questions from Daryl, actually. So as we say, this is an ever-moving picture. We have heard rumours that we're looking to see some kind of opening of hotels in London 4th of July. So that's... however, the picture is moving so quick at the moment. I mean, there have been for the last 7 or 8 days in London and the southeast, which is one of the most heavily populated parts of the UK, that we've had 0 new cases. So this is changing all the time. First and foremost, what we've got to happen is, and this is getting sort of slightly political, I really don't want to walk down this road, but schools need to open, because people can't go back to their jobs when their kids are at home. We're relying on this sort of structured opening, and it has to sort of follow certain stages to ensure that people can go back to work comfortably. So I'm confident that will happen. I mean, I've got to say, as being a sort of being on the ground and seeing some of the emails, I think our guests are keen to come back once there's some easing of the lockdown, once there's some easing of travel. I think we'd be quite surprised. There's a confidence out there that they'll be able to travel, and some of our. I think we forget that our guests are quite resilient. I remember 9/11, which we thought was going to be horrendous for the world of hospitality. Within within a week, travel was back up, and from actually being stopped, a wholesale stop of air travel, but back within a week. So I'm always quite surprised with our guests how resilient they can be, and trusting. If they've built up this level of trust, they hope we're going to look after them the best we can, and we'll endeavour to do that.
Definitely. A question for you, Gareth. I'm not sure if you were able to see it here, but Rebecca Hawkins has chimed in, and she asked, is IHG confident about the meetings business?
Yeah, great question. I hope so, because it's about 30% of our business at my base hotel typically, so we're fairly reliant on it. We are actually starting to see demand flow through again. again, in Australia, I think 2020, the majority of our conferencing business is cancelled. It's gone. And I almost feel like 2020 is off the table in terms of conferencing. There's been a lot of requests for moving that business into 2021. And there's been a lot of requests and, wanting to understand relaxation in terms and conditions and cancellation policies and that kind of thing. We are starting to see some of our traditional bookers in that part of the business, pharmaceutical companies and things, want to get quotes on their kickoffs at the start of the year, which is fairly typical for down in this part of the world. But not quite at that point of being confident enough to book and lock things in yet. But the demand is positive. What we're seeing immediately is their desire and requirement for really clear understanding of how we will operate that type of business in the future. Because, if your ballroom can fit 500 people, it can't fit 500 people anymore. Down in Australia, our social distancing restrictions are things like inside you can only have one person per 4 square metres. So you might have a ballroom that's absolutely reduced in terms of capacities. So we're looking at technology opportunities. Fortunately, at the hotel that I'm based at, we've recently done quite a big renovation, put some really great new technology into our meeting spaces. And now we're looking at how we can do live broadcasting through multiple rooms to still be able to get the volume for bigger conferences, but to meet those requirements from a social distancing perspective. So, I'm hopeful as we move into next year that that'll kick off again, but we're going to have to be right on top of it. And that type of business just changes so much. Typically very profitable business because you can do big numbers through things like, buffets. Okay, well, buffets can't be done anymore. You can't have open serveries of food anymore. So how do we shift our thinking? And that's, I guess, where, innovation and new ideas has been pretty critical.
Definitely. It's going to be interesting just seeing how that, specifically the meeting space, how that changes, because I think, it's far easier to have people on a one-off situation. They're more eager to travel, but certainly when you're with the liability when it comes to hosting meetings and all of that and just a larger group, it's going to be a little bit trickier to navigate as we move forward. So that will be interesting.
This is a very sorry to interrupt, but this is where we have to be flexible, which Gareth was saying just a short while ago. Recently, I was on a conference call, on a webinar with the Institute of Hospitality in the UK and UK Hospitality, which is another government lobbying body. And Europe is looking at we're currently at 2 meters distance. Europe is about 1.5 meters. They're currently looking in working practices to reduce that to 1 meter, and that's the UK. But this might come into place. So this is when you need to be really flexible, because 1 minute you're operating at a 2 meter distance, which is the 4 square meters that Gareth was talking about, and then tomorrow it all changes and you're at 1 meter. So your teams have to be ready to adapt and change at a moment's notice, and this is all relevant. And really, we're as much in the dark as our own government, because all the time information is changing, the picture is changing, the situation is changing, and this has a direct effect on us and our customers.
Yeah, you're right. It definitely, and it's constantly changing. Which brings me to another question that just came in from Rosie Bacci from the Four Seasons in Los Angeles. She chimed in, and she wanted to, and I think that this is really relevant to a lot of people that are listening, is that what safety precautions or ideas do you see that are going to be necessary to have at the concierge desk? So, I mean, are we talking masks? Are we talking, the plastic protectors, or what are we thinking so far, if we've gotten that far?
I think we all have, again, being in trading and operating hotels, we've implemented everything from, the feet where everyone has to stand to signage right throughout the place. We've got hands-free sanitising stations all over the place. And it actually touches on another interesting point too, is everybody has different levels of anxiety around this health crisis too. We have the absolute extremes just in our team here. I've got some people who are afraid to leave their house, and I've got other people who could really care less about the thing. They're so sort of blasé about it. So managing those different levels of anxiety to make sure that we get the right outcomes, from a safety and hygiene perspective, but that we can still pragmatically run our business. And I think the screens on the desks are one of the most contentious points we talk about. I have team members who go, they look terrible. As long as they're 2 metres away from me, I'm fine with it. I've got other people who go, I won't go on the front desk without it. So, look, personally, I think, we have to make sure that we're meeting our local health guidance and laws and legislation that comes out of this. But secondly, and most importantly, is we're having conversations with our team to understand what makes them feel safe, because it's different for every single person. It's not mandatory to wear masks in this part of the world, but we absolutely make them available for our team if they want to use them. It's not mandatory to wear gloves. There's a lot of things that are optional, and I guess it's finding the right comfort levels while still making sure that we're meeting a safety perspective.
Yeah, no, you're right on that. I have here's a question. I actually just sent it to the two of you. This is, I think, a good one for you both to chime in on. I believe it's Aisha Kirk, for head concierge at the Hilton Dubai, Jumeirah. Do you think there must be, or that there should be a kind of certification to reopen hotels in order to apply all the health and hygiene standards to everyone and to keep everyone safe? It's tricky. That's tricky because of different companies, countries.
It is tricky, but we're already seeing. I think IHG have just signed with Mark Hopkins to verify their hotel's cleanliness standards. And I think, Cleveland Clinic, isn't it?
It's a Cleveland Clinic.
And Four Seasons signed with Mark Hopkins. So. To verify their standards match those certain protocols. So I think that's going to become more and more prevalent. I think definitely country by country, and I know that we have very strict health and safety standards in the UK, and I'm sure those are going to come into play. And you're going to have to listen to as Gareth says, to the concerns of your team members as well as your guests. Putting it in place for our guests, they have a choice. Not quite so much for our team members. So they have to work, and so we have to be sympathetic to both parties. And I think there will be some kind of recognition of certain standards. Yeah.
You've seen most large companies come out with something already, and I think that was pretty important, that they did, and whether it was, the way of clean that we've come out with IHG, the Global Cleanliness Council for Marriott, there's all that kind of stuff. But at a property level, I think there's room for innovation here. I was talking with my team about this the other day, where, forgive me, it might sound a little bit over the top, but almost like a breakable seal, which you put on the room, is the last thing that you do when you've cleaned that room, whether that's something on the door handle or you walk in and you sort of literally break down the seal to say this room has been disinfected, it's been inspected, and we can assure you that it's safe to be in here. Ultimately, what's going to give that guest the best peace of mind?
We're going to publish, there's going to be no doubt that we're going to publish what our cleaning protocols are for rooms. And what our standards are throughout the hotel. That's going to become public knowledge. I'm sure it is anyway, but it's going to be more prevalent for people to see that. And they're going to make their choices from there. But, yeah.
Look, we're going to be seeing those changes. So for those that are tuning in, if you want to ask a question via audio, please be sure to hit the raise hand button, because we will do a quick round of those. I know I want to be mindful of the time, and we do have a couple more questions that I think that everybody would love to hear your thoughts on. So I know one of them is basically, okay, so hold on, I just had this question right here. Where'd it go? So It seems that a lot of people have been losing jobs lately, and I think that a lot of that, and that's always very tricky just because there's so many factors that go into that. But is there any sort of best practices or advice for those that might be either they don't know if they're going to have a job, they can maybe be part of those discussions? Any words of advice for those that are concerned about keeping their jobs?
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? And again, it's very dependent on where you are in the world. I know in Australia, for example, the government has been very generous in putting together some programs for assistance to employers to make sure that there's some level of income we can still pass on to people. They've ramped up assistance programs for those people who have lost their jobs. And there's conversations now about another program coming out about creating new jobs. So, look, I think again, the roles we could play in the business about informing our people of these things, because there's varying levels of comprehension of what's going on and what's available to people in the world. Down here in Australia, people can access their superannuation to get a little bit more cash in hand to survive through these times. So, I guess we've spent a lot of time making sure people are aware of what's out there for them. We've also been very flexible. A lot of people might have a clause in their contract where it's exclusive service. Well, if someone's down to 2 or 3 days work, we're absolutely relaxing things like that and encouraging people to find other opportunities for work if they can. But again, it's just open and honest communication. And one of the things that's just not unexpected, but continues to blow me away is when there's an honest conversation with someone in your team to let them know the reality of the situation, the acceptance and understanding and realisation from our teams that this is not anything anyone's doing to them, it is a consequence of what's happening in the world. They're so open and accepting of it, and they get on and they get out there and we, as Simon said before, we're just doing everything we can to win business, to get people back into employment and get them ramped back up to normal hours as soon as possible.
Yeah, and I would agree with Gareth. You've got to be flexible. You've got to be able to switch departments, and work wherever you need to work to get the hotel up and running. There is we're still yet to see it in London, but there is a general feeling that there might be a large return of workers back to their countries of origin in London. So there could be some deflection there for the redundancies that might be coming. I think it's been a traumatic time for everybody. We have a lot of European labour in the UK, and we feel that they'd want to go home and see family and friends back in their home cities. And we've got a feeling that might be the case. It's just we're still yet to know because our hotels are not open, and we're not in 100% of this. But hopefully that might negate some of those issues that we're going to face with redundancies, unfortunately. Yeah,
no, that's good. So we have, let's see if we can get Ajit to join us. I'm going to unmute you. I know that you actually shared a question, and Ajit, are you there? From the Shangri-La in India? Can you hear us? Because I've unmuted you. So the question, we'll see if you're able to join. We might be having audio issues. But the question that we received was how's the concierge going to work in the future with less occupancy in the next couple of months, and with guests only coming for check-in and check-out, as well as the bell desk team and the guests having to kind of like take their own luggage. So what are we kind of seeing for the future of the concierge with what is perceived might be less people coming to them for questions?
It's interesting, that personal touch piece, isn't it? We're literally not allowed to touch people. So how do you give the personal touch without the personal touch? Yeah, look, again, I keep going back to the flexibility piece, and I don't want to sound pessimistic or negative about the reality of the situation, but a lot of hotels in this part of the world are building their cost bases from the ground up, particularly from a manning point of view, and that is, what are the absolute mandatory things we need to operate a hotel? Because if we're only operating at 15%, some of the additional services we might typically offer, we're just not in a position to be able to fund it. So, when I think of mandatory services in a hotel, I think of someone to check someone into the room and give them a room key to go to the room. I think if someone has cleaned that room and made it ready for the guests to check into. I probably need someone to cook a meal, and I probably need someone to serve that meal. Outside of that, they are additional services that we build into hotels when we're trading well and we're delivering good revenue. So how can you, as a concierge or anybody in a hotel, it's even to the point of, don't think of yourself as a concierge in this moment. Think of yourself as, a multi-skilled, willing to learn new skills person that just wants to be part of rebuilding your hotel and find your space where you can do that. That might mean that you're doing something very different for a period of time, but ultimately we will recover. We will get back to a point where, we're back to something that's a little bit more what we're used to. But yeah, I just can't emphasize enough. As a general manager overseeing multiple properties, that's where we're at. And we need that flexibility. People who won't be flexible, it's going to be very challenging to find opportunities for them.
I think also that it's got to be a choice. We're when we spoke to leading hotels in the world, is it mandatory that we take the luggage out of the guest's car? Is that what they want? You've got to wait for the guest to affirm those choices. So even if you do have those services available, you can't automatically run through protocols that you normally would. You've got to make sure that you're affirming that interaction every step of the way. So yes, do you mind if they take the luggage out the back of the cars? What are you going to do with your luggage porters? Are they obviously going to wear masks? They're going to have gloves on. When they take that up to the room, are you then going to disinfect the bags for them? There's a whole level of protocols, and this is where I say we need to work on the absolute granular level to make sure that this is there. And I sort of differ slightly from Gareth here, that I think the guests still have a choice. And those hotels that aren't trying to provide the services that they originally provided may suffer, because everyone is going to be looking for that business. There is going to be less occupancy. So if one hotel is saying, look, we really can't afford to be offering you those services, and the hotel next door is saying, well, we can't afford it, but we're going to do it because that's what you've always come to expect of X hotel, you might start losing business. So it's because the guest ultimately has that choice of where they're going to stay, and they're going to want the best value that they can get and the best service they can get in that particular city. So I think we've got to be very, very careful how we look at this. It is tough economic times, but it's going to be hard to build that business back up when it does come back if we haven't looked after them along the way. We've taken their money previously. I think we now need to give something back to them as far as looking after them.